Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Today I'm going to be talking about how I keep an organized closet. I'm going to go over some basics, the process of decluttering, how to organize, and then offer some bonus tips right at the end on what you can do with everything that you're not going to keep. For as long as I can remember, I've always enjoyed decluttering my closet, but I would only do it once a year, and I would always keep things for a what-if situation. Or if I couldn't decide if I should keep something, I would just end up keeping it. So at the end of that decluttering session, I found that I was never actually getting rid of a lot of clothing. I don't remember exactly when, but I do know that one day I was finding that I was having to stuff my clothes into my closet. I was having to hold hangers out of the way just to get another one in, and it drove me absolutely crazy. And I remember thinking, why do I have so many clothes? This is when I actually realized that there were a lot of clothes in my closet that I don't actually wear, even though I declutter once a year. Decluttering once a year just wasn't enough for me. And so this is now what I've started to do. Now I set aside time each season to go through my closet and declutter and organize. And I've also have gotten myself into the habit of decluttering and organizing on the go. So kind of almost like every day, but I'm gonna get more into that later. So here's how I do it all. So first, let's go over some basics. The two things I always tell people when they ask me how I'm organizing and decluttering not just my closet, but other areas of my home as well, is to not pressure yourself and to have fun. Specifically, when it comes to your closet, I say don't pressure yourself because it might be really overwhelming the first time and a few times after that to go through your closet, and you may not want to get rid of a lot, and that's completely fine. The goal of this is to get into the habit of periodically editing your closet, and every single time you do, it's gonna get easier. Just trust me on that. Trust the process. So there are basically two things I do to keep my closet nice, clean, and organized. The first thing I like to call the habit, and the second thing I like to call the session. So the habit is essentially creating the habit to set aside clothes while you're going through your day. So this really only takes a few minutes. I usually do it in the morning as I'm getting dressed, or when I get home and I'm changing out of the clothing I wore for the day. These are the moments in the day where I realize that something just isn't for me. I'm gonna get into more details later on, so keep on watching to figure out exactly how I do that. The session is a large decluttering and organizing process, and I recommend doing this over a few days, but you can also do it all at once. If you're gonna do it all at once, I would suggest setting aside a few hours, because I do find it takes a lot longer than people think. Because I'm usually quite busy, and also because I've done this many times, if I'm doing a session, I do it over a few days while my kids are getting ready for bed. So I have two kids, and they take maybe around 30 to 40 minutes to get ready for bed each night. And so in that time, I'll be upstairs on the same floor as them, so I'm there if they need me. And I just quickly go through my closet. It takes me maybe 2 or 3 nights to kind of go through everything. But again, I've done this so many times, and the more times you do a session, a big session like this, the easier it's gonna get and the quicker it's gonna get. So let's get into the details of how to actually do this. So let's start with decluttering. Let's first talk about the habit of decluttering. And so I already mentioned that I do this in the morning or in the evening when I get home and I'm changing out of the clothing that I wore for the day. This is the time when I'm gonna realize things like, does this fit me well? Does the color look good on me? Was I uncomfortable in this all day? And etc. So when I naturally realize those things about my clothing, those are the times when I will take those items and I'll put them aside to get rid of. So that's the habit. It's one that's really easy to get into once you start doing it, and once you start, being mindful and paying attention to the things you're wearing. If something is gonna be super uncomfortable for me all day and I can't wait to get out of it till I get home, I will put it aside. And if I put on something in the morning and I'm like, ew, this totally washes me out, I don't know why I bought this in the first place, I'll put it aside, because we all do that. We all make purchases that we later regret. So now let's talk about decluttering during the session. And so this is obviously a way bigger task. You can take everything out of your closet if you want, or you can do it with everything in your closet and just kind of like rifle through it. It's completely up to you. If I'm doing a declutter and I haven't, for whatever reason, done one in a really long time, I will take everything out just because it allows me to see everything better. And then I try on a bunch of things too, just to see like how they're fitting, especially if I haven't worn it in a really long time. Either way, if you're keeping your clothing in your closet or you're taking it all out, you're going to be doing one of three things with it. For every piece of clothing, you're either going to be keeping it, selling it, or donate/reusing it. So if you're keeping it, that's obvious. You're going to be putting it back in your closet. If you're keeping something and you're a little bit unsure if you want to keep it, sometimes what I do is I hang it the opposite way of all the other clothing in my closet. So instead of putting the hanger on like this way, I put it on this way. Hopefully that makes sense. And then if I wear it between decluttering sessions, I will hang that item back up the proper way. So then I know everything that is still hanging backwards, I didn't wear, and I need to put some serious thought into whether or not I'm going to keep it during my next decluttering session. If you're going to sell the item, usually what I do is I either use good old Facebook Marketplace, I love Facebook Marketplace, or I consign things. As you do this more and more, you're going to get a sense of what people will buy or what stores will take from you and what people won't. And my bonus tip that I'm going to be offering at the end of this video is related to this selling kind of situation. For items that I don't think that I can sell, what I do is then donate or reuse them. You can donate them at your local charity. And when I say reuse, what I do with that is, because I do a lot of DIYs, sometimes I cut things down and then I'll use it to stain, like old t-shirts are amazing to stain with, or I'll use it as like pillow or footstool stuffing. If I can reuse something, I will. I don't like waste. So anything that is just really old and gross, can't sell, can't donate, I will do my best to try to figure out a way to reuse that somewhere. A really quick way that I use to decide if I'm going to keep something or not is I have two questions that I always ask myself when decluttering my closet. The first question is, have I worn this item in the last year? The second question is, does this fit my body right? If either of the answers to those questions are no, I generally don't keep the item. Of course, the questions that you ask yourself when deciding whether to keep or sell, donate, etc. your clothing are going to be completely up to you because it's going to be based on your lifestyle. Let's talk about organizing. When it comes to organizing, I combine like items together and then I organize by size and color. What I mean by that is shirts are organized by body length and sleeve length, and then bottoms are organized by their length. So shorts all the way to pants, and then mini skirts, midi skirts, full length skirts. Along with the length, I also organize everything by the colors of the rainbow. If this doesn't make any sense, I've created a visual for you to see, which can be found on my blog, and I will put the link to that in the description of this video. For items that I'm hanging, I like to use matching hangers. I just think it makes the closet visually more appealing. We use wood hangers and have been for almost 10 years now, and they're great. I have like no complaints. Previous to using wood hangers, I did use velvet hangers for a while, but they just didn't work out for me. I found that they always broke over time, especially if the piece of clothing I was hanging was kind of heavy. They are great because anything will stay on it. Like if you have a camisole or something, because of the velvet, it'll stay hanging on that. One tip I do have is to purchase proper hangers for your skirts and pants. We use wood ones again with like the little clips on it to hold all of that. When organizing my drawers, I just use drawer dividers. You can use bins, but I find it gets quite pricey and it's not as adjustable as a divider. A divider, you can just move left or right, but a bin, you're kind of like limited to the space of that bin. The things I keep in drawers are heavy sweaters, any of my DIY clothes, any workout clothes, pajamas, and then all of my undergarments. Everything else I hang up into the closet. So if you have any open shelving in your closet, I like to keep that space especially nice and tidy, and I use it almost like a display in a store. I like to keep my bags and shoes on the open shelving, and we have a few photos on there, and we also have our Google Home on there. Because it's open shelving and you're always going to see it when you walk in, it's kind of like keeping it nice and clean decreases that visual clutter, which is important to me, especially if it's one of the places that I visit first thing in the morning when I wake up. I want to keep my mind like nice and clear and not overwhelmed with clutter. So those are the tips and tricks and like the process that I have for organizing my closet and keeping it organized. The bonus content that I wanted to talk about was about how I actually consign my clothing. I live in Calgary, Alberta. It's a nice Canadian city. I've lived here all my life except for a few years for school. And so over this time, I've gotten to know the city really well. Along with that, I've started to get to know like the second-hand stores that are in the city, the consignment stores in the city. This is how I go about consigning things. So it doesn't matter what city you live in. I think you just kind of need to know your stores, kind of know what consignment stores will take. And the more you do this, the more you'll just kind of know. So when it comes to consigning things, I basically will take the clothes that I'm going to consign, divide it into piles based on what store I think will take it. So the first store I usually go to will take high-end brands, designer brands, anything like Louboutins, Gucci, Chanel, but they will also take things like Sandro, Alison Olivia, and Aritzia. And so I put all those things into a pile. They don't take anything from fast fashion. So things like H&M and Zara, this first store I go to won't take them. So I don't even drop it off there. I take all those other brands, all those other pieces of clothing, and I bring it over to the first store. They go through it, they decide what they're gonna take and consign, and they give me back anything that they don't wanna consign. I take everything from that first store and I add it to the pile of clothing that I'm taking to the second consignment store. So then when I bring that pile to this second consignment store, they have all the brands I know for sure that they're gonna take, plus some extra that are maybe like higher end, maybe they're not exactly their clientele, but I put it in there anyways, just in case. After that, I use the same process. I take it all and then I go to a third consignment store. The third consignment store is Plato's Closet. I think it's a pretty big chain. I'm not 100% sure, but they give you cash right away on the spot for your clothing, but you're gonna get a lot less than if you were consigning it, where you're dropping it off and then waiting and then returning to get the cash. So I go to Plato's Closet, let them go through everything else, get my money, and then anything that's left over, I put right into donation right away. I don't take anything back home with me because if it's already left my house, my goal is to not have it come back in. I feel like once I start bringing things back in the house, it's just gonna like defeat the purpose of decluttering in the first place. So yeah, that is kind of like the tips on how I declutter and organize. I feel like I have so many more tips and tricks that I could talk about, but I'm not going to talk about it in this video. But if you do want to know more, just let me know. And before I forget, please like and subscribe. That really helps me out as I'm trying to build this channel about being a productive homebody. And yeah, I will see you next time. Thank you. Bye.